Good afternoon. I'm Walt Bauer, and I'd like to welcome you to the Human Development Institute's second spring seminar. We welcome all the participants who are joining us online today. Please be sure that your microphones are muted when the presenters are speaking. Our presenters will provide an opportunity for questions this afternoon, and we welcome questions from all of our participants. Please feel free to use the chat box for your questions or comments. Should you have any questions about CEUs, you can contact me. Please take a moment at the conclusion of the seminar to complete our brief evaluation. The evaluation will be sent to your email address after the seminar. It is really helpful as we plan for upcoming seminars. The title of the webinar is Supporting Students with Significant Disabilities in Finding Competitive Employment. I'm now going to turn it over to Kathy Shepard-Jones, the Executive Director of the Human Development Institute.
All right, now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Walt. Good afternoon. I am, in fact, the Executive Director of the Human Development Institute, and I just want to warmly welcome you to our spring seminar webinar on supporting students with significant disabilities and finding competitive employment. Our mission at the Human Development Institute is to promote the inclusion, independence, and contributions of people with disabilities and their families across the lifespan. Today's webinar truly exemplifies this through our priorities around education and employment, and through the importance of partnerships and learning from each other, which is really critical when we want success for each student in competitive employment. I also want to thank all of our speakers for giving of your time today, particularly as we all find ourselves attending to work and life issues that we've never seen before. I am delighted that our registration is over 300 people today, because this shows that we truly can teach anywhere and learn anywhere. And now I will happily turn this over to our moderator and colleague, Mr. Johnny Collette, who will introduce our panelists.
Well, thanks, Kathy, and thanks, Walt. And hi, everyone. Let me add my welcome to that of Walt's and Kathy's. And we're just thrilled that you're here and, have sort of prioritized this time to focus on this really important issue. I'm grateful that we have, a broad range of folks represented in terms of different roles and perspectives on the work. And it is our intent to deliver well on what we've promised here. So let's talk a little bit about what we intend to do. Walt, there we go, sorry about that. So you'll see here our seminar description. You've seen that before in the flyer. So one of the things that I will not do today is necessarily read every word on the slide. But, really what we've gathered for today is to talk about how we best support students with significant disabilities. And we'll talk more about what that means in finding competitive employment. And we know it's a really important issue for lots of reasons, but as our description indicates here, outcomes for students with disabilities do, as we all know, lag behind their non-disabled peers. And for our particular focus today, we're going to be talking about students with functional mental disabilities, multiple disabilities, and autism, because we know when we talk about those populations of students, the employment outcomes and opportunities really are even worse. So Kentucky Works is a project we'll talk a little bit about in a few minutes, as is Community Work Transition Program, which many of you are familiar with across our state. But these two projects are working closely together to pilot and approach in 2 Kentucky school districts, and you'll see their logos there at the bottom, the Simpson County Schools and Montgomery County Schools, and I'll introduce them in just a few minutes. But really, in their efforts to support youth and young adults with significant disabilities in obtaining competitive employment, and Kentucky Works and Community Work Transition Program is partnering to see how we can best support these districts in their efforts already in this really important area. Our learning objectives, we only have a few, but we felt like these made a lot of sense. We know that expectation is such an important thing, right? We need to have high expectations and appropriate supports for all of the individuals that we serve. And one of the things that I believe deeply is that high expectations are non-negotiable. But the other side of that is that they are individually realized. So while we have high expectations for all kids, we still recognize that these are individual students, individual persons with disabilities. And we do hope that as a result of our time together today, that we will all increase our awareness and our expectation that these individuals do and can contribute significantly to the workforce in the Commonwealth. You'll hear the districts talk a little bit about some things that they're doing in terms of the employment process and the really strong partnerships that they have in place and are either establishing or strengthening in their districts between families and parents, employers, and providers. And also hope you'll learn a little bit more about some proven tools and processes that these districts are utilizing to support youth and young adults in finding competitive employment. So I want to introduce the folks who'll be presenting today in just a moment, but I want to begin with a few what I'm calling kind of startling realities to help serve as hopefully a frame for our broader conversation today. Kentucky, we as a state, we rank 47th, so we rank 47th in the nation in per capita income. And as we think about students with disabilities transitioning to post-secondary life, some of the data are really startling. Only about 1 in 4, so 1 out of every 4 youth with disabilities are competitively employed a year after they leave high school. Even worse when we know that barely 1 in 10 students with significant disabilities are competitively employed a year after leaving high school. So I think those are important data to sort of have in mind as a backdrop to our conversation today and as a frame for the things that we will discuss and learn together. So, as we as individuals, as organizations, as communities, parents and families, and along with our elected officials and other state and local leaders, we're envisioning a brighter future for all Kentuckians. And certainly that's the right focus and the right vision. But, we have to be intentional in our efforts to ensure that all of our citizens, including individuals with disabilities, and yes, individuals with significant disabilities, have access to higher quality and better paying jobs and careers. So we're very pleased today to highlight a couple of examples of the kinds of local efforts it takes to realize the brighter future that we envision for all Kentuckians. So let me tell you who you'll be hearing from today. Kristen Hallmeyer is a special education teacher in Simpson County and specifically at Franklin Simpson High School. Shelby Jones, and you'll see and hear them more in a few minutes. Shelby Jones is an employment specialist in Montgomery County Schools, and Arden Goodman, a director of special education in Montgomery County Schools. Trina Hewlett, many of you know, is the director of our community work transition program, and I am Johnny Collette, for whatever that's worth, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here and to moderate our discussion and really to learn from these great experts locally. Kathy in her great introduction already talked about the Human Development Institute, but you'll see there on that slide that the important mission of HDI to support individuals across the lifespan, their families and their communities. And, the 2 projects we'll talk about today are just 2 of, more than 50 that at HDI that really are aimed at this mission and this vision and cover a range of topics and issues. Our priority areas, I think Kathy mentioned this earlier, there are 6 of those. Early childhood and education, and you'll see the rest there. But the 2 projects I'll talk about specifically, and we'll talk about today, Kentucky Works is in that employment priority area at HDI, and Community Work Transition Program sort of goes across 2 priority areas, certainly the employment area, but also the education arm of the early childhood and education priority area. So not only are these the priority areas of HDI, as our executive directors already mentioned, but the 2 projects we'll talk about today are key priorities of HDI and how we, as the University Center for Excellence in Disabilities Research and Services, intend to best support the Commonwealth and our partners. Let's talk a little bit about just a brief overview of some of the work that we are doing in Kentucky to support districts and schools and communities in this focus on obtaining employment for individuals with significant disabilities. Back in 2016, we did receive a federal grant, a partnership in employment grant, again, from the federal government. And that was a 5-year grant, so we're in year 4 of that. And this grant is administered by HDI, and it includes some really critical and key partners across the state. And we'll see a list of those partners in just a moment. We know, obviously, that this is work that's best done in partnership. And we know the incredible value of coordinated efforts across partners with similar interests. So we are obviously grateful to administer this grant, but to do it alongside a lot of really important partners across our state. I want to talk just a bit about the Employment First Executive Order that you may be familiar with, because I'm pretty sure we can't overemphasize the importance of this. But last May, the governor signed the Employment First Executive Order, and that was a really important executive order for the work that we lead and that y'all lead, and that is very important to you. And you'll see in the bullet points there, the executive order did a couple of things. Of great importance, of course, is it said that competitive integrated employment in the community really is the first and primary option we're going to consider for people with disabilities who want to become employed. And it also created the Employment First Advisory Council that HDI administers, but again, has a membership that is representative of lots of different partners and interests and stakeholder groups across the Commonwealth. Before I move off of this, I wanted to say a few things about the Employment First Executive Order and really, again, how I don't think we can overemphasize the importance of this and how it's positioned us not only for this last year, but we trust moving forward. The Employment First Executive Order also responded to some pretty stark realities that we know are true for individuals with disabilities. For example, we know that the workforce participation rate for individuals with disabilities is about about 1/3 that of people without disabilities. We know that working age adults with disabilities live below the poverty line at twice the rate of the general population. So, the Employment First Executive Order recognized that barriers to competitive integrated employment exist for many individuals with disabilities, and that improving these outcomes would require some shifts and changes in some particular areas of focus, and not the least of which was requiring coordinated efforts across multiple state and federal agencies. That's what it takes, we know, to see the improved outcomes that we envision. The Employment First Executive Order also highlighted the value of collaboration between the public and the private sector and how important that is to improving employment outcomes for individuals with disabilities. So, in short, this executive order has allowed our state to call particular attention to a historically disadvantaged population of individuals and to position us in a great way as a Commonwealth with an opportunity to really assist persons with disabilities in achieving successful employment outcomes, full engagement with their communities, and the promise of really changing the trajectory of their lives and even the next generation of their families. So I appreciate you letting me spend a little bit more time on that, because again, I don't think we can overemphasize the importance of this, over this past year, but even, the promise of moving forward in the future. I want to talk just a bit, and I promise that this presentation is not really long, and then you're not going to hear me talking a lot more. But I do want to set the stage well for hearing from our experts at Montgomery County and Simpson County. The Kentucky Works is one of the projects that is supporting districts in the work that they're leading around this effort. And as I mentioned before, it is a project that's part of the employment priority area at HDI. And again, this is just an array of projects and efforts that are really, they're not isolated and separate and siloed. I mean, the real intent here is to have an array of efforts that are aligned to best support improving employment outcomes for our citizens with disabilities. And Kentucky Works as a project is working very closely with HDI's Community Work Transition Program, again, that many of you are very familiar with, as it's a longstanding project in our state. We'll talk a little bit more about Community Work Transition Program in just a moment. A little bit more about Kentucky Works. It is a collaborative effort, as I mentioned earlier, to support youth and young adults with significant disabilities, and supporting them in a very intentional way as we think about their transition from high school to post-secondary opportunities, leading to competitive integrated employment, and with the real goal, of course, being to enhance those opportunities for them and to improve their outcomes. So I hope that's a key sort of message you hear throughout our time together today, is we're really working hard to enhance opportunities, and with the goal of improving employment outcomes and making a difference in some of those data and numbers that you saw earlier. Just as a quick note, for when we may say significant disabilities throughout today from time to time, but for the purposes of our conversation today and for the purposes of this particular project, significant disabilities refers to students and youth and young adults with functional mental disabilities, with multiple disabilities, and with autism. You'll see here in these 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, thank you, there are 5 points here on this slide. You'll see the things that really serve as the anchors to our work and the commitments to our work in this project. And I think all of us, even from our various perspectives and roles, understand the importance of high expectations for individuals with disabilities, and including individuals with significant disabilities. And so we are committed to raising that awareness and that expectation of the incredible contributions that these individuals make to the workforce. And obviously a part of success in that means that we're supporting not only students well, but also families and educators well. As many of you on this in this event today will know better than me, sometimes it's not so easy to navigate all of the systems that you encounter as an individual with a disability, or as a parent, caregiver, educator, or otherwise. It's not always easy to navigate the various systems across which an individual with disabilities interacts. And I think in Kentucky, we've done a good job over the years with trying to address some of those issues, and I think we've done a really good job with that, and understand that there's still areas that we're all working together to improve. But part of this effort is to assist students and families and educators in navigating what's sometimes just a really not only voluminous, but sometimes complex and difficult thing to do. Also using proven tools to build work skills, to think about what that individual may need in a particular work environment, and all with employment success as the goal and sort of our focus. Improving partnerships with families and employers is critical. You're going to hear the districts talk about both of those things today, and we know how important that is. But in this pilot approach that we're engaged with these districts, there are some sort of concrete processes and opportunities that they'll talk about that are really aimed at improving partnerships with families and employers, and that's a key priority of Kentucky Works. And as I mentioned in the executive order, making sure that we can deliver on the promise of that executive order is something that we're definitely focused on at HDI as a whole, but certainly with these projects in supporting these districts, and ensuring that competitive integrated employment really is the first and primary option that is considered for individuals with disabilities. You'll see here our state partners. I'll leave that slide up for just a moment. So you can see it is really important, as we said earlier, in the coordination across multiple agencies that serve youth and young adults and families in our state is critical to the success of this project, and I think critical to improving outcomes for individuals. Community Work Transition Program, many of you are very familiar with that. Trina, are you on today? I think she is, but I haven't heard her voice yet. I want to invite her to talk about this slide if she is. Trina? Okay, well, Trina, if you are, interrupt me if you like. But just so we can go ahead and move on in this, Community Work Transition Program, again, is something that many of you are familiar with across the state. It's a long-standing project at the Human Development Institute, and working in cooperation with the Office of Oak Rehab, the Kentucky Department of Education, and other critical partners. And really the focus of it has been and is really supporting students with disabilities and gaining the skills and resources they need to be ready for life after they leave us, right, in our public school system in Kentucky. One of the ways that I talk about, and I'm not the expert, Trina is, but one of the ways that I talk about.
I'm unmuted now.
Well, hello, Trina.
Evidently, y'all had me muted. It wouldn't let me unmute myself. I'm not sure what that meant, but that was kind of scary.
Well, you know, I was just getting ready to talk about this slide, but how about you as the expert do that?
Oh, I don't know about expert. Passion maybe, but not expert. Yeah, the Community Work Transition Program, as a lot of y'all know, has been around for 30-some plus years. I've been involved with it for probably 20-some of those, well, no, actually probably 30-some of those years. It is my passion. I firmly believe that it is everybody's God-given right to work in a job of their choosing. And our program is designed to help those individuals exit high school with employment. And we've been doing that for years. As all of you all know, when the pre-employment services rolled out, we kind of got away from that a little bit. And so we're swinging the pendulum back, and our focus now is going to be better outcomes for our students exiting school. And that was one reason why we were excited to be a part of this collaborative effort with Kentucky Works, learning some new tools that we can take to our program and our schools and help them to help their students be more successful.
Well, thank you, Trina. Trina is, she is with us today, and we'll jump back in later probably. And if she doesn't, I may invite her to anyway. Thanks, Trina. Yeah, you know, as the not expert, and Trina is on this, you know, when I'm out talking about this project, one of the things I often mention is that very first bullet point, really, because the power of this program to provide a positive beginning. And we all know how that is, right? Positive beginnings. You know, even with the best intentions, we're going to have some false starts here and there, and we can recover from that, and we do. But we want to do everything we can to provide a positive beginning in the world of work for students with disabilities. And, you know, this is a program that is in a majority of our districts. As of today, we have 172 school districts in Kentucky. And of the 172, 105 of those have participating schools in the Community Work Transition Program. So we're really grateful for this project, and we're really grateful to be able to partner with Community Work as we support these two districts and the work they're leading to improve outcomes for students with significant disabilities. Okay, so what we're doing now, I've said it a few times, so we are obviously working with Montgomery and Simpson County to pilot an approach that we've talked about, and they'll be able to talk about it better than me, but working with the schools and parents and employers and local rehab counselors there. And really, it's an intentional focus on making sure that that we ultimately support them in their work to create a plan. And obviously that plan is not something that we're dreaming up. It's not something that, other folks are saying would be what an individual needs to do, but it's really based on the individual student's strengths and interests and employment opportunities. And we want to support them in the work that they're looking to create a plan that ultimately leads to community work experiences for participating students in their districts in competitive employment. So that's what we're doing now. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing next. Really not the topic of our conversation today, but I want folks to know kind of where we're headed as a project here. So we do intend to leverage our learning from the pilots, work in Montgomery and in Simpson. And we always want to be in a position to best serve Kentucky school districts in the work that they're leading. So we will leverage our learning from these pilot districts to do that. We are considering the expansion of the pilot approach. Again, we're so grateful to Montgomery County and Simpson County we couldn't have imagined a better start than in these two districts. But given some of the things we've learned there, and I think some practices and that are proving promising, I think, in those districts, we certainly are considering expansion of this pilot approach. So we hope to be able to share more about that with folks in weeks and months to come. We also intend to develop a plan to incorporate these effective practices and lessons learned, understanding that every district is different and schools are different, and it's not about just picking something up in one district and setting it down in another. Many of us who have had experience in schools and districts and otherwise know that that's not always, you don't always 100% replicate something, but what we want to do is make sure that from our learning in these pilot districts, effective and promising practices and other relevant lessons learned that could be helpful to other Kentucky school districts. We're going to develop a plan to incorporate those things that are most relevant, and we believe that will be helpful into all the participating community work transition program districts. And so that's why another reason we're just so grateful for community work transition program and Trina specifically, and Stacy and all the other great staff that work on that. I'm Stacy. I hope I didn't say Tracy. I meant Stacy. But the primary focus of all of this is supporting youth and young adults with significant disabilities in obtaining competitive employment. So that's kind of what we're doing now and where we're heading as we move forward. But just before we kind of move into a moderated question and answer time with the districts, we wanted to remind ourselves here why all this matters. Now, you heard some other data and some other sort of stark realities as it relates to individuals with disabilities in the Commonwealth. But just real specific for a minute. We know that employment outcomes for students with disabilities kind of lag behind their non-disabled peers. If you just look at the most recent data that we have from the Kentucky Post-School Outcome Study, another project at HDI, these numbers ought to get our attention. So just the most recent data from 2019. So regardless of disability category, 43% of all youth with disabilities in Kentucky who left high school last year were competitively employed a year later. So 43%, again, that is regardless of disability category. That's all youth with disabilities in Kentucky who participated in this survey who exited high school last year. Only 43% were competitively employed a year later. Now, those numbers get even worse. So that's all kids with disabilities. When we start digging deeper, we start thinking about, well, how does it look for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, multiple disabilities, and autism? When we look at those, the outcomes, as you can see, are even worse. Only 13% of those youth were competitively employed a year after leaving high school. And perhaps even, that's bothersome enough to us, I hope. But 56% of those students really not engaged in any type of employment or post-secondary education. So there are a lot of reasons that this is a priority for HDI, that this is a priority for these particular projects. But these data are things that get our attention, and we want to serve well, we want to support well, and we recognize, though, that those who know best about this are the ones who are closest to the students. And that's why we really, while giving you a sort of overview of these projects, we really want the bulk of our time to be focused on them and the work that they're